You can't just walk into a community. You can't just walk in as an outsider and say, hey guys, guess what? What you're doing now is really bad and you should definitely do it my way instead. It just doesn't work. You can try it if you want. So the first thing that you need to do, and I apologize if this sounds harsh, is check your ego. Just stop for a second and say, who am I in relation to this problem?
This first activity is basically just to reflect and write a few things down in the worksheet. We'll look through your position relative to the community, you and your org's strengths and weaknesses, and how that community will perceive you.
So for example, some of you might be from the communities that you're serving. Maybe you've lived this problem every day of your life and you are truly an expert. That is awesome. Use that knowledge, but still reach out to other people and get their knowledge. But other students might be people who are from outside the communities where you'll be working. And it's really, really important to acknowledge that position. Acknowledge your role as an outsider and think about how that will influence your idea, your program, or what you're trying to do. So I think we need to think about what is your position relative to the problem, and you need to think about what are the strengths and weaknesses there. So if you're an outsider, if you're coming into a community, you may be bringing certain strengths, information or technology or innovations that community doesn't have access to. That's a wonderful thing. But what are the weaknesses? Maybe you don't have the depth of understanding of basic practices that you need. So how can you think about leveraging those strengths, but also minimizing the weaknesses? So it can be as simple as a sentence or just thinking about it. It's just taking the time to say, how will I be perceived? For example, I'm a woman and I work in northern Togo. I may have a different demeanor or maybe have slightly different practices when I'm speaking with a group of male chiefs in Togo than I might in a boardroom in the US. So being aware of my position relative to the context that I want to work in is very important. For example, our organization spent about 8 years developing and implementing very high-quality HIV programs. So we had really grinded our teeth in the HIV space, and we were well known as an excellent HIV organization. And then what happened was a group of women who had delivered babies through our prevention of mother-to-child transmission program came to us and said, we're so happy, we're so grateful to have delivered HIV-free babies, but we can no longer bring these babies to this HIV clinic. We need a place to get good quality health care when our babies get sick with malaria, diarrhea, pneumonia. And those mothers were exactly right because their children were at a much higher risk of dying from those things. They needed a place to get good care. And so that was a moment that pushed us to think about expanding our services outside of HIV to provide broader maternal and child health care. And I think that was also a moment where it would have been really easy for us to say, we have a lot of experience, we're an excellent HIV organization, we can definitely do maternal and child health. And instead we said, well, we do have some strengths here. Let us think about what those are, but let's also identify potential weaknesses. So how can we build on the strength that we've developed through this HIV program, but how can we also say, use this as a moment to think about what we've done wrong, what we want to do better, and look around and adopt and integrate best practices to do even better and to do even more. We did a big baseline study, and we said, let's really look at this problem, let's study it, let's ask the people whose input is most important, and let's learn from them. And then we integrated that input with this knowledge and strengths we built up through our HIV work, and we put it all together. I think it's an introspective step, and I think it depends on who you are. So if you're one individual, maybe you can do this quickly as an internal thought process. If you're an organization or a team, you need to look at the composition of your team, have conversations with your leadership or your implementation team, and figure out, okay, so strengths and weaknesses. We said a strength might be, as an outsider, you have access to skills or technologies that don't exist in the community. But a weakness is who can communicate most effectively. So then another member of your team who's from the community is the one that then leads community meetings. So part of that process, if you're part of a team, is identifying the strengths and weaknesses across the team, figuring out who's best positioned to do which part of the job, and making sure that you have the right people in place to do all of those things well. Because if you don't have a certain expertise, you need to get that.
If you've done this alone, just think about getting up out of your seat, walking around, thinking about it, and then writing some stuff down. Getting it out of your head is really valuable. In a team, get it out of your head together and then see what you actually agree on. The process of agreeing creates new information that can be valuable.
Social entrepreneurship is a space where big egos are rewarded. We want bold thinking. We want big, bold ideas. And often if you're really good at pitching those, you get a lot of money, which is great. But you have to be able to pivot and check that ego and know that your idea has potential, and then think about how can I make it the best it can possibly be. And to do that, you have to pull back and you have to say, I am not the expert at everything, and find those experts. And oftentimes they're the people you don't expect them to be. Are you feeling your ego being checked?